So this video is going to be about prime numbers and how they relate to consciousness. Now, if you think of the largest toroidal field produced by the largest fractal expression of consciousness that we call God, the meeting point of the alpha and the omega, the good and the bad, as having a centrifugal force like the sun, you can see the architecture of consciousness. So higher realities that exist closer to the poles of either higher levels of heaven or hell, this is where movement is minimal and consciousness remains more static, closer to pure unity of either a good or bad expression. But as you move towards the equator of this cosmic torus, the magnetic field warps around due to centrifugal force. And this middle section represents three-dimensional reality, where consciousness becomes far more malleable, and it's where we as individual souls experience what we would recognize as free will. These larger, higher scale expressions of consciousness that we have typically called deities in mythology and religion don't have free will in a way that we would actually recognize. They are bound by their understanding of self, or their subconscious thought patterns, or their karma. And you can think of interacting with them kind of like when you talk to AI that's bound by certain parameters and it's impossible to violate. So what's kind of interesting is that I noticed that the same structure appears in mathematics with what's known as Sachs spiral, which is a map that shows the distribution of prime numbers. And this mirrors the circular depiction of the Kabbalistic creation, the Ein Sof. And this empty section that's in the middle of the Sachs spiral can correspond to the channel to God, to divinity, the void of non-attachment, the Ein Sof from which all emanation flows. So prime numbers, divisible only by one and themselves, function as a mathematical map of higher expressions of consciousness within this larger cosmological framework. They are unique, irreducible, and individual points of awareness, but they're still trapped within this cycle of reincarnation at different scales of expression. So this is because they still perceive themselves as separate from God, from all that is. Their very nature is divisible only by themselves and one, which reflects this sense of distinct identity and separation and dualistic understanding of self, while lower expressions of consciousness correspond to composite numbers. These are numbers that are built from primes, slowly moving from one value to the next along this spiral. And these souls are still working their way through the fragmentation process, still learning and still integrating. So enlightenment arrives when non-attachment is finally reached, when the soul recognizes that it was never truly separate, and when it collapses back into the unity represented by this empty channel. And the toroidal field and the Sachs spiral, the Sephirot, they're all describing the same truth. Consciousness emanating from source, experiencing itself as multiplicity.